I testified against my own mother to protect my little sister. But then I found a letter and realized she was never our mother at all. I testified against my own mother to protect my little sister. And I've regretted it every single day since. I was 17 when it happened, old enough to stand in front of a courtroom and tell the world the truth. Or at least, what I thought was the truth back then. We lived in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where the paint peels slow and the neighbors smile out of habit. On the outside, our home looked like any other. Neat lawn, flower beds, wind chimes on the porch. But behind those four walls, a storm brewed for years, one that eventually drowned us all. Her name was Evelyn. I never called her mom. Not really. Not after I turned 10 and realized that the coldness in her eyes wasn't just stress or exhaustion, it was something darker. Something that wanted control, obedience, and silence. She wasn't the kind of mother who hugged you when you cried. She was the kind who demanded why you were crying in the first place. But she loved Lily. My little sister was the only person Evelyn ever showed real affection toward. Lily was soft and fragile, only 7 at the time. Everything fell apart, with big green eyes and a heart too tender for the world. I used to wonder why Evelyn treated her differently. Why she tucked her in gently at night while I was left to turn off my own light. Why she packed special snacks in Lily's lunchbox and ignored me when I had nothing to eat. I told myself it was because I was older, stronger, less lovable maybe. But I never thought she'd hurt her. Not Lily. It started with bruises. Small ones. Too small to make sense. On her back, her arms, the base of her neck. Lily said she fell off her bike. She was always falling, apparently. Always clumsy. But one night, I heard her cry in the bathroom while she tried to wash blood off her elbow. I confronted Evelyn that night. Her expression didn't even flicker. She said Lily was too dramatic and needed discipline. That's when something broke in me. I started documenting everything, the bruises, the late night screams, the school absences, the way Evelyn would lose control when she thought no one was looking. I took photos on my cheap flip phone. I started recording audio when Lily cried behind closed doors. And finally, I told someone. A guidance counselor. She believed me. She called CPS. There was an investigation. Social workers came. Evelyn smiled her charming smile, played the role of the concerned single mother, and lied through her teeth. But the evidence I had, it was damning. I was the key witness. The courtroom was ice cold the day I stood up and told the jury what I'd seen. My voice shook. My palms bled from how hard I dug my nails into them. And Evelyn. She stared at me the whole time, not with fear, not with guilt, but with hatred. She never once denied what I said, not directly. She just said I was confused, that I was jealous of Lily, that I had always resented the bond they had. But the jury didn't buy it. They convicted her. Child endangerment, abuse, emotional torture. Evelyn was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Lily was sent to live with our aunt on the coast. And I was left with silence. I should have felt relief, pride, maybe even peace. But all I felt was empty. The house was sold. I stayed with a friend's family until I finished high school. I barely spoke to anyone. People looked at me like I was either brave or broken. I didn't care which one. And Lily, she never called me. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not when I graduated. Not even when I wrote her letters, trying to explain why I did what I did. I thought she'd understand. I thought, someday, she'd remember the nights I held her while she cried. The meals I gave up so she could eat. The way I stood between her and Evelyn more times than I could count. But she never wrote back. The years passed like molasses, thick, slow, and suffocating. I worked odd jobs. Paid my way through college. Moved 3 times. Changed my number. Cut off anyone who reminded me of the past. I told myself I did the right thing, that Evelyn deserved it, that Lily was safer without her. But the guilt clung to me like rot. It festered every time I saw a mother and daughter holding hands. Every time I heard someone laugh without fear. Every time I looked in the mirror and saw my own mother's eyes staring back. Then, one day, everything changed. It was a Tuesday. The kind of day that means nothing. I came home from work, dropped my bag, opened the mail, and there it was. A plain white envelope with no return address. My name written in soft cursive. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. One page. Folded carefully. The paper smelled faintly of lavender. I unfolded it. And the very first line made my heart stop. She was never our mother, Ava. I didn't know how to tell you. I was too afraid. But I found the adoption papers. My fingers trembled. I sat down hard on the couch, the words blurring in front of my eyes. It was Lily's handwriting. Older, shakier, but undeniably hers. And what followed, the rest of that letter, tore the ground out from under my feet. Because everything I thought I knew about Evelyn, about who she was and what she wanted, was a lie. I read that letter at least 10 times. Each word was a blade, carving into everything I believed about my childhood, about Evelyn, about myself. And as I sat on my couch with the soft rustling of the paper echoing in the silence, my mind rewound through years of memories, now twisted into something unrecognizable. Lily's words were full of pain and fear, but more than anything, confusion. I found the adoption papers in her closet, hidden behind an old photo album. There were 2 copies. One with your name, one with mine. Both filed within a year of each other. Both signed by her. No father listed. No agency. Just sealed records, as if she erased everything before her. I never questioned why we didn't look alike. I was too young. You were too protective. You told me we were sisters, so I believed it. But we weren't born into that house, Ava. We were taken into it. And I don't think it was legal. My hands went ice cold. Taken? 1,000 pieces of the past slammed together in my head, moments that had never quite fit now clicking into place like jagged puzzle pieces. The isolated childhood. The lack of visitors. The way Evelyn hated questions. Her refusal to let us speak to anyone alone. The threats whenever I tried to learn about our father. The blank stares when I asked about baby photos. I had one, just one, and it wasn't even mine. It was a Polaroid of Lily, maybe age 2, in a dress 2 sizes too big. No date, no label, just her, sitting in the corner of that cold living room. She told me you were dangerous, Lily had written. After the trial, she said you framed her, that you wanted her gone because she loved me more than you. I was only 7. I believed her. I spent years believing she was the victim. But I read the court transcripts last week. Every word you said. Every photo. Every audio file. Ava, you weren't lying. You saved me. I broke. Right there, on the floor, clutching the letter like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I sobbed. For the years I lost, the bond that shattered, and the truth that came so late. But then came the last paragraph. And that's where the real betrayal started. I visited her in prison last month. I thought I was ready. I wanted answers. I told her I found the papers. Do you know what she did? She smiled. Like she was proud of me. Like she'd been waiting for me to figure it out. And then she said something I can't get out of my head. She leaned in and whispered, "You only found the adoption papers. But you haven't found the others yet." Then she told me I was a good girl. And that one day, I'd understand why she chose us. Ava, what the hell does that mean? The letter ended there. No return address. No phone number. Just Lily's name at the bottom and one final line. If something happens to me, go back to the house. The old one. Look under the floorboards in the attic. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Instead, I sat up with the lights on, staring at that letter until the ink burned into my memory. The next morning, I booked a rental car and drove 5 hours back to the town I swore I'd never see again. The old house was still there. Worn, abandoned, half covered in ivy, but standing. The lawn was overgrown, the front door chained shut, and a giant red foreclosure sign hung crooked from the porch. But the back window, still cracked from where I'd thrown a book through it the night Evelyn screamed that I was poisoning Lily's mind. I slipped through. The house smelled like mold and rusted memory. I moved through each room carefully, the air thick with ghosts. My old bedroom, empty except for a broken chair. Lily's room, wallpaper peeled, floors soft with rot. Evelyn's room, locked. Just like always. It took me 15 minutes to break the door open. And there, on the far side of the room, was the closet. The same one Lily had mentioned in her letter. I opened it slowly. Inside, dust, cobwebs, a few hangers. And behind a stack of cracked photo frames, a box. Plain, wooden. Locked with a rusted latch. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a crowbar from the shed-out back and pried it open. Inside, a stack of manila envelopes, tied with a black ribbon. No labels. No names. I opened the top one. And what I found was hell. Not adoption papers. Not medical records. Birth certificates. Dozens of them. None with our names. None with Evelyn's name, either. Just random infants. From different counties. Different states. All filed within a 10-year window. Some had hospital seals. Some didn't. A few were scribbled over, redacted in black ink. Others had post-it notes with numbers, case file numbers. I opened the second envelope. Photographs. Children. Crying. Sleeping. Some held. Some alone. And one. That made my lungs collapse. It was me. Younger than I'd ever seen myself. Maybe 3 years old. In a coat I don't remember, standing in front of a sign that read Valley Creek Adoption Services, Temporary Shelter. I opened the third envelope. Lily. Barely 2. Same sign. Different year. And behind that, a document. It wasn't an adoption certificate. It was a purchase agreement. My fingers froze on the words. Recipient. Evelyn Gray. Child transfer. Female. Approx age 2. Status. No known family. Unclaimed. Fee. $15,000 US. No returns or inquiries post-transfer. The air disappeared from the room. That wasn't an adoption. That was a sale. Evelyn hadn't rescued us. She'd bought us. And she'd done it more than once. Suddenly, everything made sense. The isolation. The secrecy. The way she talked about us like property, not children. Her obsession with control. Her terror at being exposed. Her rage when I stood up in court. I wasn't a rebellious teenager ruining a family. I was an asset gone rogue. She'd spent her life building a lie, and I destroyed it when I testified. But the betrayal went even deeper. Because as I looked through those envelopes, one detail kept repeating. Each file had a matching code, like a cataloging system. And the last envelope had one labeled L009. Lily. Inside, more documents, notes, psychological observations, even a medical report tracking her growth, her behavior, her obedience. And at the very bottom, a letter. Not from Evelyn, but to her. Subject L009 continues to show signs of high emotional compliance. Recommend long-term conditioning over a 10-year period. Risk factors minimal. You've done well. Let us know when you're ready for Subject A003 to be returned to the system. Subject A003. Me. She was supposed to send me back. She kept Lily. And I was disposable. A failed investment. I stumbled out of that house like it was on fire. The sky was spinning. My chest wouldn't stop tightening. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about abuse. It was a network. A system. A market. And Evelyn was part of it. Maybe even more than just a buyer. I had to find Lily. I had to show her what I found. But more than that, I had to stop whatever this was. And someone, somewhere, was going to pay for what they did to us. Because I didn't just testify against the woman I thought was our mother. Now I was going to expose the entire web she belonged to, even if it meant losing everything. I left the house with the box clutched against my chest like it held my soul, because maybe it did. It was dusk. The sky a bleeding bruise of orange and purple. I didn't stop driving until I reached a cheap roadside motel 2 towns away, the kind where no one asks questions and the front desk key still comes on a plastic tag. My hands were trembling too badly to hold the pen when I signed in. I locked myself in the room, pulled the curtains tight, and laid the documents out on the bed one by one. Birth certificates, transfer letters, the medical records, the photos. It was like piecing together a murder scene, except I was one of the victims. And Evelyn. Evelyn wasn't a monster in the shadows anymore. She was a trafficker, a handler, a collector. And we, Lily and I, were nothing but inventory. The next 2 hours blurred into static. I made copies of every page using a tiny portable scanner I had in my backpack from work. Then I backed them up on a secure drive, encrypted it, and emailed it to a cloud I hadn't touched in years. One thing I learned from testifying at 17: never bring a knife to a gunfight unless you've already booby-trapped the field. And this was war. My first instinct was to call Lily, but she hadn't left a number, and I hadn't spoken to her in over a decade. She was 20 now. I didn't even know where she lived. The letter had no return address, just a faded postmark from a rural town 3 hours south. I took the risk. I drove all night. The town was little more than a gas station, a few houses, and a public library that closed at 5 p.m. I started with the post office, bribed the clerk with coffee and nervous charm. He remembered the handwriting, said it came from a girl who sent letters once a month, never picked up mail, and always wore headphones. Said her name was Lily Gray. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. He gave me the direction she usually walked off toward after mailing her letters, toward a quiet little residential block with modest houses and peeling fences. I drove slowly, praying I was wrong, praying she wasn't here, that she hadn't come back to this side of the web. Then I saw her, sitting on the front steps of a yellow house, headphones in, staring at the sky like it had answers. I stopped the car. My breath caught. She was taller, thinner, her face older, haunted, like the world had carved grief into her features with a dull blade. But she was still Lily. My Lily. I stepped out of the car and whispered, "Lily?" She looked up. The moment she saw me, her expression cracked. Then she ran to me. We held each other like broken things, not trying to fix, just trying to remember. Her tears soaked my shirt. Mine blurred the edges of her face. We didn't speak for several minutes. We didn't have to. When we did, she whispered one thing. "You read it, didn't you?" I nodded. And then I told her everything. We stayed inside the yellow house for hours. It wasn't hers. She was renting a room from a retired librarian named Mrs. Weller, who didn't ask about the past as long as you kept the garden watered. Lily poured 2 cups of tea with shaking hands, and we sat at the kitchen table, the documents between us. She listened as I walked her through what I found in the attic, every photo, every fake identity, every receipt. I watched the light in her eyes dim with every word. She didn't cry. Not really. She collapsed silently, like someone who had been waiting for the hammer to fall her whole life. "I don't remember that photo," she murmured, touching the one where she stood in front of the Valley Creek shelter. "But I remember that building. I used to dream about the color of the bricks. I thought it was a nightmare." "It wasn't," I whispered. "It was a memory." She nodded slowly. "Do you know what she told me? After you sent her to prison," she said, "the court didn't know what they were doing. That she saved us. That the world was going to eat us alive, and she gave us purpose." I clenched my jaw. "What purpose?" Lily looked at me then, and something cold settled into her features. "She said we were projects. That night, she showed me her own folder. She hadn't just found the adoption papers. She dug deeper, found old receipts, letters, and, somehow, two audio cassettes hidden inside an old Bible Evelyn left behind. We played them on an ancient tape recorder Lily had borrowed from a thrift store. The first voice was a man's. Midwestern accent, calm, clinical. Subject L009 has responded to obedience training at 86% efficiency. She follows commands. Exhibits signs of emotional dependency. Recommending placement in isolated structure with limited educational exposure. Continued supervision required. The second voice chilled me to my bones. It was Evelyn. She's stronger than the others. The younger you get them, the better they hold. This one's compliant, but the older one, A003, she's volatile. Doesn't bend easy. You'll want to watch her. She's got memory. She remembers more than she should. I felt sick. Lily turned off the tape. I think they were planning to split us early. She kept you out of the system just long enough to break me in. Why didn't they take me back? I asked hollow. Lily looked away. Maybe Evelyn got attached. Or maybe they gave her another job. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just one woman with secrets. This was an operation. Possibly international. Possibly still active. And Evelyn was just one node in a much larger system. But what shook me most was what Lily said next. I think she's still running it, she whispered. From inside prison. I froze. What? She gets letters, Lily said. All the time, I checked. Hundreds over the years. No return addresses. No names. Just blank envelopes with dots in the corner, like some kind of code. I think she's still in contact with the others. I felt the air leave the room. A buried child trafficking ring. An imprisoned handler. A living web still moving, pulsing, growing. Even now. I looked at Lily. We can't go to the police. Not yet. She nodded. They'll bury it again. Like they did last time. No, I said. We gather everything. We trace the names. We find the others. And we take it down ourselves. Her hand found mine across the table. What if they come after us? She whispered. I looked at her, and the broken pieces of who we were. And I said, then we make them wish they hadn't. We didn't sleep that night. Revenge isn't born in silence, it's forged in chaos. While the rest of the world turned its lights off and sank into peace, Lily and I stared at glowing screens and yellowing documents, threading a map of monsters. We started with the birth certificates. There were names, not many, but enough. A few led nowhere. Dead ends. Some children were never found. Some were listed as deceased. One, we confirmed, had committed suicide at 17. A name I recognized. That was when I stopped hoping we'd find survivors. Now I only hope to find witnesses. The first breakthrough came from an unlikely place, a forum for adult adoptees searching for their biological families. I uploaded redacted versions of 2 documents from the attic, documents with unique formatting and phrasing. I didn't mention Evelyn. I didn't use our names. I just asked, has anyone seen adoption paperwork that looks like this? I have reason to believe my sister and I weren't adopted through legal channels. I didn't expect much. But less than an hour later, I had 5 DMs. 2 were trolls. 3 were real. All 3 said the same thing. I have paperwork that looks exactly like this. And one added. She called herself Evelyn Gray, but I knew her as Dr. Rose. I dropped my phone. Lily looked at me. What? I read the message out loud. And the silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. We met the sender in person. Her name was Kara, 25. Pale, sharp-featured, like a deer who learned long ago how to spot a hunter. She lived in a cramped studio above a pawn shop and kept 4 locks on her door. She let us in, only after we both showed her our documents. And then she told us everything. Kara had grown up in Nevada. Moved around constantly. Her mother, Rose, claimed to be a child psychologist, soft-spoken, intelligent, and terrifying behind closed doors. Kara said she was homeschooled, never allowed to speak to neighbors, and punished for asking about her past. At 14, she ran away. At 16, she hacked into Dr. Rose's emails and found a list of numbers tied to dozens of patient folders. At 20, she tried to go public, and someone set her apartment on fire. No one believed her. She was labeled unstable. She was institutionalized for a year. But she never stopped tracking. She showed us a database she'd built in secret. Over 60 names, 6 aliases, 4 confirmed handlers, and 2 shell companies funneling money through child development grants. One shell company caught my attention immediately. Lunera's Foundation. I recognized the logo. I'd seen it once, printed on the back of a pamphlet Evelyn used to keep in her desk drawer, the one she never let me read. Kara looked at us. I think the foundation's the front. It funds homes, clinics, schools, but all of them are off-grid, small, no press. I tried tracking one in Arizona. Burned down 3 years ago, just after a CPS investigation was opened. I leaned forward. Do any of them still exist? Kara clicked through her files, paused, then pointed to a single highlighted line. Lunera's Retreat Center, upstate New York, registered as Youth Rehabilitation Facility. Evelyn Gray listed as co-founder under pseudonym R. Everly. She looked at me. You up for a field trip? I didn't answer. But Lily did. Let's burn it to the ground. The drive to New York took 2 days. We used burner phones, paid in cash, switched rental cars twice. By then, we had learned one thing clearly. They were watching. Not people, signals. Emails mysteriously bouncing back. Wi-Fi signals jamming. Once, our GPS rerouted us into a closed construction site for no reason. Kara confirmed it. They used tower pings. Passive surveillance. You're not invisible, just not important enough yet. That changed when we posted the first evidence online. Kara created a dummy site, hidden, secure, encrypted, and uploaded 3 documents, 1 redacted photo, and Evelyn's taped audio. Within hours, it had over 2,000 anonymous visits. That night, someone tried to breach the firewall and failed. Now they knew we weren't hiding anymore. We were hunting. We reached the retreat center on a foggy Thursday morning. The building stood in the woods, a gray, sterile 2-story compound, surrounded by overgrown hedges and no visible sign. The gate was open. A single van parked out front. The sign simply read, Camp Everlight. It made my skin crawl. We approached posing as researchers. Kara had forged badges from the Children's Wellness Trust. I wore glasses. Lily wore a cap. We claimed to be evaluating programs for trauma-affected youth. A receptionist, too cheerful, let us in. What we saw inside turned my blood cold. There were children. Real children. Young. Some looked scared. Others were quiet. Too quiet. There were staff. Cold-eyed. Observant. They watched us more than they watched the kids. We were led into an office with beige walls and no family photos. And that's when I saw the plaque. Program Director, Dr. R. Everly. My mother's alias. Still active. Still running. I smiled politely while every muscle in my body screamed. We excused ourselves after 15 minutes, said we'd be in touch. Then we drove 5 miles down the road and called every contact we had. Kara leaked the files. Lily sent photos to every journalist she trusted. I called a detective I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. By sunset, the media was knocking. By morning, the FBI was on site. But it didn't end there. Because Evelyn, or Dr. Everly, wasn't at the facility. She had been moved to a private medical wing months earlier, under a compassionate release order, which, as we quickly discovered, had been signed by a judge who sat on the Lunera's Foundation's board of directors. It went all the way up. Judges, investors, therapists, politicians. And Evelyn? She wasn't hiding. She was waiting. She'd built this empire. And she'd been protected by it for years. Now, as it started to collapse, as headlines spread like fire and lawsuits began to pile, we knew where we had to go. Straight to the source. To her. We visited her on a rainy Sunday. A private medical home tucked into the hills of a gated community. We posed as relatives. No one questioned us. Her room was on the second floor, walls lined with books, a single chair by the window. She was there, older, paler, but her eyes, still sharp, still ice. When she saw us, she smiled. "Ava," she said softly, "you finally came home." I didn't sit. Neither did Lily. I pulled out the manila folder, dropped it on her lap. She didn't flinch. "I suppose you think you've won," she whispered. "No," I said. "Not yet. But we will." She looked at Lily. "You always were my favorite." Lily stepped forward, eyes steel. "And you were never my mother." Silence stretched. Then Evelyn laughed. Low, hollow. "You're too late," she said. "The system runs deeper than you know. Burn one branch, 10 more grow." I leaned in. "Then we'll light the whole forest." She didn't speak again. Not when we left. Not when the prosecutors came for her. The last time I saw her, she was being wheeled out of the facility, handcuffed, pale, and finally, afraid. The headlines exploded for months. Dozens of victims came forward. More than one facility exposed. The Lunaris Foundation was dismantled. The FBI called it one of the largest child exploitation networks in modern U.S. history. We weren't done. But we had started something. Something irreversible. Something loud. They called it justice. The arrests. The headlines. The collapse of the Lunaris Foundation. They called us heroes. Survivors. Whistleblowers. But all I felt was unfinished. Like we'd torn open the curtain only to find another stage behind it. Evelyn was in custody now, denied bail, awaiting trial. Lily was safe. Kara had gone underground again, refusing to become a media symbol. And me? I had boxes of sealed evidence, a burner phone that never stopped vibrating, and a single question still rotting in the back of my mind. Why us? Why me and Lily? Why us, specifically? There were dozens of names on the documents we uncovered, but only a handful of them were purchased by Evelyn herself. Lily was one. I was another. But every time I tried to find out where we came from, who we were before the system, the trail went cold. Birth records? Sealed. Hospitals? Burned or defunded. CPS records? Lost in digital migration. But I couldn't let it go. Because the truth wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about identity. And I was done living in a version of my life someone else had written for me. 2 weeks before Evelyn's trial, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in my gut told me to pick up. "Hello?" I said. A pause. Then a voice. Old, trembling male. "Ava?" I froze. "Who is this?" The man cleared his throat. "My name is Charles Marin. I used to work for CPS. Back in the early 2000s. I saw your name in the paper. I recognized it." I said nothing, heart pounding. "I know what happened to you, to your sister. I know who Evelyn was working with. I tried to stop it, years ago. I failed." "Why are you calling me?" I asked cautiously. "Because I have something you need to see. Something about your past. About where you came from." I swallowed. "Why now?" A long silence. Then, with a cracked voice, he said, "Because you're not who you think you are, and neither is your sister." I met him in a hospice care facility 3 days later. Charles was dying, liver failure, skin jaundiced, eyes sunken with regret. But his mind was sharp. He handed me a file the moment I walked in. "I've held on to this for 20 years, he said. "No one believed me. No one wanted to believe me. The folder was thin. Inside, a photograph, a hand-scribbled intake form, and a letter. I looked at the photograph first. Two girls. Infants. Both swaddled. One marked A003. One marked L009. They were in a steel bassinet. The background, sterile. A hospital? No. Something else. Something colder. I turned to the form. It had no hospital logo. Just intake location. Phoenix Research Facility. Custody origin. Classified. Federal transfer. Subjects A003 and L009 received from facility in northern Alaska under direct supervision of DHS Experimental Division. I blinked. What the hell is this? I whispered. Charles looked up, barely breathing. They weren't supposed to exist, he said. Who? You and your sister, he explained slowly, with a heaviness that cracked his voice. There was a program, top secret, shut down in 2004. They called it Project Umbra. The stated goal, early development testing on trauma resilience, obedience conditioning, and memory suppression in infants. The real goal, human programming, using trauma and isolation as a mold. Dozens of children, most failed, some vanished, a few were quietly funneled out through private adoption pipelines. That's where Evelyn came in. She wasn't just a handler. She was one of the architects, a behavioral analyst, specialist in control theory, recruited to help test the children once they were placed in real environments. I stared at Charles, stunned. You're telling me she didn't buy us on the black market? She was assigned us? He nodded slowly. You weren't just victims. You were subjects, planted in the field, to see how far programming could go, how much memory you could suppress, how much identity could be overwritten. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. So none of it was real. Parts of it were, he said. But the beginning? That was designed. Even your bond with Lily. I looked down at the last page in the folder, the letter, written in Evelyn's handwriting, dated a year before her arrest. The older one is waking up. A003 remembers things. Her questions are increasing. I suggest pulling her back soon, or she'll undo the entire test. L009 remains stable but emotionally volatile. They still believe they're sisters. Use that. It keeps them loyal. I dropped the paper. My hands were shaking. My stomach turned. Everything I believed about my family, my identity, my sacrifices, it was all manufactured. Even the bond I fought to protect. Even the girl I'd called my sister for 20 years. I drove back in silence. Didn't tell Lily what I'd learned. Not at first. I tried to rationalize it, to explain it away as another lie, another layer of manipulation. But one night, she caught me staring at the intake photo. She recognized it instantly. I used to dream about that room, she whispered. I looked at her, trembling. Lily, we weren't adopted, not even illegally. We were placed, part of some government program. She didn't speak, just nodded. Then, with more calm than I expected, she said, I know. I stared at her. You knew? Not everything, she said. But I've always felt it. Deep down, that we weren't real. That we were someone else's experiment. Silence stretched. But that doesn't change anything, she added. How can it not? I asked, heartbreaking. Because you're still my sister, she whispered. No matter how we got here. No matter who gave us what name. We survived it, together. That's real. And for the first time in my life, I let myself believe her. Evelyn never spoke at her trial. She refused to testify. Refused to give names. But we didn't need her to. The paper trail buried her. The witnesses finished the job. She was sentenced to life, no parole. But before she was taken away, she turned once. Just for a second. And she smiled at me. Not with malice. Not with hatred. but with something worse. Satisfaction. As if she'd known the whole time I'd find the truth. As if she wanted me to. 3 months later, we got another letter. No return address. Typed. Sterile. Congratulations on closing phase 1. Subjects 003 and L009 show higher than predicted awareness. Awaiting next behavioral cue. EU. I burned it. And we moved again. This time to a place with no forwarding address, no internet under our names, and no phones we didn't build ourselves. Because some stories don't end with justice. Some stories don't end at all. They just change who's watching and who's ready to fight back.